Welcome to episode 11 of the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. I'm a mother of 3. I'm also a yoga teacher and a consultant for yoga teachers and studios. This podcast was born out of how I continue to feel between the yoga teacher trainings. I can sometimes feel isolated in the wilderness of yoga entrepreneurship. Each week, I plan out my yoga classes, I drive to them, I answer the emails, I do the accounting and the business tasks, and the other teachers all around me are doing the same. On my yoga days, I get to see sometimes the admin staff at the studio, our studio owner, and one other teacher, but we don't have a lot of time to connect. For me, a yoga teacher training brings that connection to other supportive yoga teachers, as well as my own growth and learning and the motivation to practice yoga. And I crave and I miss that when I'm away from it. So that was the motivation for this podcast. I wanted to create a place where you, as a yoga teacher, could feel connected between the trainings, workshops, and classes that you are able to take. Today, I'm really excited to introduce you to Tracey Eccleston. Tracy is the owner and educational director of Ageless Arts Yoga. She has a 200-hour yoga teacher training that she leads. She's also the creator of the Foundations of Chair Yoga and Chair Yoga Therapeutics teacher training. Tracy shares her yoga internationally. She's located in Paris, Ontario. A friend of mine recently took a workshop at the Toronto Yoga Show with Tracy, and this friend of mine told me that Tracy has a real gift for sharing yoga in a way that makes it really accessible to all populations. Tracy helps teachers to find the yoga poses that are within the natural range of motion for each student in their class. She is also passionate, as you will hear, about the business side of yoga. This is a great episode to listen to if you are a yoga teacher who has ever struggled to set a price for your classes, workshops, or retreats. As we know, a lot of our money blocks are around the mindset. Maybe all of our money blocks are mindset. Tracy gives us some perspective in this episode that I feel is often missing in the yoga world. Maybe you've just personally finished your yoga business taxes. Maybe you're working away on them, or maybe you're avoiding them. Today's episode has inspired me to dig a little further into my own money mindset and accounting. So let's have a listen. Welcome today, Tracy.
Thank you very much, Shannon. It's great to be here.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add to that introduction?
Well, I think the only thing that I could add is an upcoming program that we're going to be having soon called Yoga Teacher Mentoring Program. So keep an eye on our website, www.agelessartsyoga.com for those details.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that then.
Well, with the number of teachers that leave a yoga teacher training program, I'm finding that a lot of them are sort of thrown into this world of business and are questioning, what's next? How do I find work? How do I get jobs? What kind of things do I need to do to motivate myself in my own profession? And the whole purpose of the Yoga Teacher Training Mentoring Program is to help each individual find their own particular path to whatever is going to be their new business.
Oh, that's so exciting. That is a much needed thing. So I'll be excited to share links with that in the show notes. So let's dive right in today. What I was very excited about when you emailed me back was we were talking about how to set prices for private classes. And you talked about how you incorporate the teachings of knowing your own value as a yoga teacher. So I'd like to touch on that and kind of even get your story on where that came from, like why that's a part of things now or how that's a part of things.
Certainly. Well, I think just in general, valuing yourself is a really important thing when it comes to just having boundaries for yourself and honoring yourself and doing self-care, which is such an important part in a yogic lifestyle. But boy, is it hard when we're in an industry that seems to want to shy away from stuff and things and items, just because, we want to practice that aparigraha of non-attachment. But at the end of the day, if you've decided to become a yoga teacher to have as your career, you need to be able to bring in an income that is going to sustain you and sustain you completely. Make sure that you're looking after yourself financially and having some of the everyday comforts of life. So I think it's really important that yoga teachers take the time to really look at what a 1-hour class means when it comes to a dollar value. To go a little bit deeper into that, so many yoga teachers I find when you sort of talk about an hourly rate, they don't realize that 1 hour really includes so much more. And an example of something that I say to my students in my 200-hour training is, for every hour you teach, you have to drive to the class and you have to drive home. And there's not a lot of businesses where you just work a 1-hour shift. Usually you're working 2 or 3 to justify that drive time. You usually need to arrive to your location early to ensure that the room is set up the way that you want, that the ambiance is right, the temperature is correct, the mood is set. After class, you're going to need to return the room back to its condition if you had to move any furniture or set anything up. And chances are you're going to have a couple of classes that will have students that want to chat with you before and after class. So right there, you're probably, just with drive time, arriving early and doing all of that, you're probably up to about an hour and a half, if not 2 hours of your time. And this is just the stuff that's associated with the class itself. In order to get your class, you've had to have marketed yourself. You need to do your advertising and your social media, which means that you've got to maintain your website and check your emails and answer phone calls. You've got to design the classes that you're going to teach. You have to purchase insurance. You need to look after your books. And of course, there's always continuing education like those that are listening to your podcast are doing right now. So all of this is time that needs to be paid for by your 1-hour class. So I like to say to students in general, for every hour you teach, there's a very good chance that you're doing 2 hours work outside of that hour of teaching. So essentially a 1-hour class becomes 3 hours of your time. If you're getting paid $60 per hour, that means, $60 for the class. In essence, that means that you're getting paid $20 an hour. So you want to be looking at, obviously the industry around you and what the standards are. But at the end of the day, you have to value yourself and you have to ask yourself, what am I worth? What is my time worth? And set your own rate based off of that and trust that there will be clients that are going to agree with that valuing system and hire you in.
So true. Oh, I like it that you brought in all of the different expenses that we just kind of pay along the way and then don't factor in when we go to teach a 1-hour class. Someone looking from the outside might think, oh, wow, I want to be a yoga teacher and make all of that money in 1 hour, where it's really, at least, as you said, 3 hours. How do you personally then look at that and then set the price of your own classes?
Well, personally, and as I said in my little spiel there, it really does come into effect what the standard of the industry is around you. That being said, it is possible to change the industry around you just by setting your own values. So one of the things that I look at is how many hours it is that I'm actually investing in my yoga teacher's work. So, it's easy to say I teach 14 hours a week, but when I'm doing the math and looking beyond that, chances are I'm working 35 to 40 hours a week. From there, I want to look at what is minimum wage and think about my education and think about the work that I do and how I give back to society and decide, I need to at least be making minimum wage. Now, for me, I think that I'm valued more than minimum wage, and I'm confident that many yoga teachers feel the same way. So from there, I start to look at how I rank in regards to what I'm giving back to the community and what I'm giving back to society, and I value from there. So I'm less likely to look and see what yoga teachers in the area are making and more likely to set values for myself. So it can be challenging sometimes because, we've got to really sort of think outside of the box and honor ourselves. But at the end of the day, what do you feel you're worth? Are you worth $60 for an hour yoga class? Are you worth $100 for an hour yoga class? You have to follow your instincts, and then, you've got to ensure that you're meeting the expectations. You're being clear with your marketing as to what it is that you are going to provide, and then continue with your heart and give those services.
Those are such good points. I like also how you said that you look at so basic minimum wage, and you're not just looking at yoga teachers around you, but also then looking at other occupations. That's a great gauge as well, is to think, okay, what would be a similar occupation, someone who's helping the health and wellness of the community?
And it's interesting, too, because some people will say, oh, well, find out what other yoga teachers are making. I like to look beyond that a little bit, too. It's like, what are the massage therapists making in the region? How much is their hourly rate? Because along with that hourly rate, depending on whether or not you're just going in and running a class or actually renting a space and running a studio, there's a lot more that becomes involved on that front as well.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not forget, too, that as yoga teachers, and this is something that I'm really seeing becoming a big challenge in the industry with some of the more mature teachers, we don't have a retirement plan unless we make a retirement plan.
Exactly.
So when you're bringing in your dollar value, not only are you looking at paying all of the bills and overhead costs and giving yourself a salary that keeps you up to a decent standard of living, but you also need to have enough money that you're putting away ready for your retirement. And, when you don't have a pension, I'm seeing a lot of yoga instructors that are hitting that 65, 70 year of age. And unfortunately, I'm watching them be unable to retire because they don't have the financial wherewithal to actually be in a place that they can retire. So very important, especially for the young instructors, know that you want to be looking after your money, and this is your personal money, not your business money, in a way that you're looking after yourself. So, I had a friend who sort of told me that I should always work with a 10, 20, 70 theory. And she said that the 70% was what you live off of, 20% of your income is what you put away into retirement, and 10% of your income is what you give back through donations and through support to other people. And I remember having that conversation and questioning, do I have that money now to put away? And her response to that was, if you don't have the money now, you never will. So if you don't have the 20% to put away to your retirement now, no matter how much money, you'll never have enough. If you don't have 10% to donate back and give back to society, it's nice to think that someday you will when you have enough money, but just the way that humans are, we use what we have. So unless you incorporate it into your life when things are perhaps a little bit tighter, it will be harder to incorporate into life when things become more flush.
That is a really good share. I like that a lot.
It's really nice to have people in my life that have been very supportive of my choices and who have had really good business sense, and it's been very beneficial for me in my career as a yoga teacher. So.
What a gift you're giving then to your yoga teacher training group as well that just graduated. That's great.
I'm so excited to see what it is that they do in the next coming months. A couple of them have already got themselves some jobs, so it's really exciting to watch them flourish and grow.
What is the maximum number of private classes that you book per week?
I find that it really does vary on the season and my personal travels. Because with the chair yoga, I do a fair amount of traveling throughout the United States and Canada, and I don't like to commit to sessions if I can't be there consistently week after week. So it definitely does vary. In the summertime, I'm able to take on more private sessions than I am in the fall. And then again, in January, I'm able to take on a few more than I am in the spring just because of my travels. But in general, that is such a personal thing because I think when it comes to your body and what you're able to teach, I just want to be clear that my answer probably shouldn't be reflective to each individual student or each individual teacher. So for me personally, I'm content teaching up to 15, 20 hours a week. But there are seasons and times where I will choose to do a little bit more or a little bit less based on how I'm feeling in my body and where my schedule is taking me.
Oh, that's good. That's
one of the challenges with this money situation and with starting your own business is that we're such individuals. And, for somebody else, teaching 15 hours could be absolutely atrocious on their body, and somebody else would take on those 15 hours and say it was a breeze. And it's dependent on the style of yoga you're teaching. So, for example, a lot of my private sessions are in therapeutics and in chair yoga. So the physical toll on my body is nowhere near as intense as if I was teaching perhaps a hot vinyasana flow power class. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely.
So I think that's something that each person needs to figure out for themselves, which is always a crummy answer to hear. And usually what ends up happening is a yoga teacher will graduate, they'll take on work, and then suddenly they'll have too much work and they'll start to crash in their bodies. And that's the sign that they get. Fingers crossed that people as they start will get better at sort of honoring their bodies and checking in and making sure that the choice isn't made based on finances, but based on how they're feeling. And if they're not feeling good, then they're not serving their clients in the way that they should be.
Exactly. I got the impression that you give a discount when people book more classes in advance, so kind of package them together.
I do, and that's something that I personally offer, and I find that people like to see a discount. People like to get a break. So usually what I do is I'll have an hourly rate, and if they commit to 5 classes, which are paid for in advance, they'll get a 5% discount. If they commit to 10 classes, again, which is paid for in advance, they'll get a 10% discount. And I'll go all the way up to 20%, just simply because guaranteed 20 hours of work can be very beneficial for me. So I'm happy to offer credit. Now, in regards to that, just again, looking at it from the business perspective, some reminders if you do choose to do that kind of thing. Don't spend your money until you've earned it. So, for example, if I've booked 10 classes and I get that upfront check with the 10% off, I'm not going to take that to the bank and go buy myself a new yoga mat and sport gear and have some adventures. Each week that I've earned the percentage of that money, that's when I pay myself. Because you never know what might happen. There might be a situation occur that, depending on what your refund policy is, you might need to refund the money to somebody. And I work on the basis of, if something were to come up that's obviously out of the norm, I'm more than happy to give a full refund if they need to cancel for some reason. I think that's good business. I think it's only appropriate. So you don't want to spend your money before you've earned it.
That is a really good piece of advice. Because it can also feel like, I think, just personally, when you go out and you teach and someone books even a session or a group of private classes, a couple of weeks into it, it can feel like, oh, I'm not getting paid, whereas you've got paid a long time ago.
Exactly, yeah.
How do you kind of track that? So if someone gave you a check, you would take it to the bank, but then you must have some system of...
I actually have an accountant that I work with, and I think that is something that is a wise and healthy investment for anybody that's going into business for themselves. It's amazing the amount of trouble that you can get yourself into by not knowing how things work. So it can be sort of scary because I know some accountants can be quite expensive. But my accountant, who I absolutely adore, basically when I went to him, he said to me, I'll always earn my wage. So through the ways that he's found me savings and not loopholes, but things that I didn't know. So for example, he said to me, don't buy computers, lease them, because you write the 100% of the lease off and you get a computer every 3 years. But if you buy a computer, you can only write off a certain percentage each year. And by the time you're done, you can maybe write off 40% of the computer. So having an accountant can really make a big difference. And just having them set you up. So initially, like my first few years of business, I was just set up so that I could run things myself. And I did check-ins twice a year to make sure I wasn't making any errors and that things were going smoothly. And then I had my accountant do my taxes at the end of the year. And then eventually it grew to the point that business was going along so well that it just made sense to have him on a monthly basis. And to me, it's a good thing in business if you reach the point where you need to invest in an accountant. That's a positive step in business.
For sure. How do you deal with the sense sometimes in the community, you touched on it a little bit with the aparigraha or non-attachment. How do you deal with that in terms of, I hear some yoga teachers saying, well, I like to give back to my community, or I just teach yoga classes for free. And what would you say to people who are feeling guilty about asking or feel that they should be giving yoga?
There should never be any guilt in regards to receiving, because if nobody received, nobody would be able to give. So in order to have that balance in life, you need to be able to receive in the same way that you are willing to give. And I found the more that I'm willing to balance that out, that equation, because it always used to be very much, I want to give, the more it became available to give. In regards to some people, they choose to teach yoga simply because that's what they want to do, and they're not looking to attach business and money with it. And wonderful for them, so long as they are honoring themselves in another way for the income. Does it create a little bit more of a challenge for us who are looking to make this our business and our lifestyle? Without question. But I'm going to trust that each person will receive the clients and the students that they're meant to work with. And those that are in need will go to the clients or the teachers that are offering their services for free. And those that are okay and are comfortable in spending money will come to those that are willing to spend money too. If I can also touch base on the giving back, there's so many ways that you can continue to give back as a yoga teacher that doesn't involve giving away your services for free. So one of the things that I like to do is offer classes where the proceeds will go to a community center of sorts. And I want to be clear with the word proceeds. So what that means is I have paid for my space, I have paid for my wage, and anything after that, I then give back to the society or the community that I'm going to. So there's a way that you can honor yourself and give back and let the students know that this is how this class goes. It's a pay as you like. I'll pay my bills, I'll pay my wage, and then anything after that goes back to the community. And very few people have ever had a challenge with. In fact, I can't think of any people who've had a challenge with that in my circle. And I think that when they see someone honor themselves, they have that respect for you as well.
Tell me a little bit about, I'm going to jump off topic completely here. I'd like to hear more about your kayaking yoga.
It has been an absolute joy. One of the things that I love to do is find what it is I love and what I'm passionate about and just explore opportunities within that. So my husband, Derek, and I had been talking last year, and I was saying to him, we're not getting out on the river enough. We're not doing enough kayaking. I'm really missing that in my life. And I said, I would love to do this kayaking, meditation, and yoga day. And everything just fell into place. I met up with a Grand River rafting company, and they were willing to supply me with the kayaks. And they're great in the sense of I can contact them the day before and say, and this is how many I need. Now, usually I'm touching base with them about a week before, because it's amazing how many people sign up last minute for this kind of thing. But what's so joyous about it is that in addition to the kayaking, I was also able to implement a complete break from technology for myself, because that was another challenge that I was finding, that with business, and I'm sure many business owners can relate to this, you're always on. As a sole proprietor or as somebody who runs their own business, you're always checking emails, you're always looking at messages, you're always responding. So when I designed this program, I wanted to make sure that it was a complete disconnect from technology and a complete reconnect to nature. So we meet at about 9 a.m. on the edge of the river in Paris. We do a wonderful stretching 20-minute yoga class that's just to prep the body for getting into the kayak, coming into the moment, releasing the technology, and setting an intention for a day of nature and joy and fun. No cell phones are allowed. In fact, I even ban watches, so nobody has any clue what time it is. And anybody who joins the day knows that I have no clue what time we'll finish, because we finish when we finish. So we hop into the kayaks. We usually do, it's about, I think it's a 12-kilometer kayak stretch to a place called Five Oaks in Paris, which is further up. And this is a wonderful community. They've got this beautiful land that we hop off of the boats, and we go underneath this incredible maple tree and do our hour yoga class. Well, I say hour, but I guess an hour because I don't have a clock. Just from that experiences of teaching so many classes, you get an idea of how long an hour class is. After which we usually take a break to do a little bit of mindfulness, of walking meditation, a little bit of forest bathing where you really become part of nature. There's washrooms at this facility, and we also have a quick bite to eat. Everybody brings their own packed lunch. At that point in time, depending on how people are feeling, they have the option to grab a ride back to the start point, or they can hop back onto the water again, which I always hope people do, because the second half of the river is a really smooth part of the river. So when we get onto that part of the river, we stop and do a floating meditation. So we make a kayak lotus where everybody's nose points in and we all connect holding each other's oars. And as a team, we float, doing just this wonderful present moment meditation, either eyes open or eyes closed, whatever it is that speaks to you. And then after that, we break once more. And sometimes we go for a swim. Sometimes on the first stretch, we stop at a spot where you can actually drink spring water coming right out of the ground, which is a real joy. And my favorite part so far is every time I've ended at the Brant Communities Park, there has been a bald eagle waiting for us. So he sits in his tree, and a couple of times he's grasped a fish right out of the water in front of us and then hopped up into the tree to enjoy his feast. So it's a really joyous day. We start at 9, we finish when we finish, and it's all about just reconnecting with yourself and the nature around you.
That sounds magical.
It truly is. I've got one coming up on Sunday, and we've got a group of 12 people. I limit it to usually 15 because I want to be as intimate with the nature as I can. But it's been selling out like hotcakes this year, so it's very exciting. And I'm going to be announcing some new dates for next year real soon.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's been amazing talking with you today and just hearing all of your insights, really great insights. So thank you for sharing that with our yoga teachers.
Thank you so much for contacting me. It's always a joy to make new connections and support and give back to the community in any way I can.
Thank you. Alrighty, connected yoga teachers, so much great information around setting prices that place a well-deserved value on your offerings. Thank you, Tracy, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to share your wisdom with us. So often in the consultation calls I have with yoga teachers, I hear the same money mindset struggle. Yoga teachers who want to teach and not have to take money from students and send out invoices and do the accounting side of things. Consider this for a moment though. Do you want to be teaching yoga as a hobby? Do you want to be a charity, giving your time as a yoga teacher volunteer? Or do you want to run a profitable yoga business? I have to thank my business coach, Natalie Akdal of BizChicks. She has a whole podcast episode on this called Hobby, Charity, or Business. Something like that. I will make sure to link to it in our show notes. It was huge for me just in terms of money mindset. Another thought just around this is, or a question for you is, would you go to your mechanic and expect that you wouldn't have to pay for the time spent fixing your vehicle? Would you go to your dentist or your massage therapist and feel upset when they offered you the bill at the end of your visit? You don't. You expect to pay. You value these services. We as yoga teachers really want to look at the message that we're sending to yoga students. We want to be sending the message out there that our time spent in training, running the business, and teaching is valuable. When you profit in your business, you can also give back to your community. So you can do that through giving free yoga classes. At our studio, No One Sound, we have a Karma Yoga Fund where we give classes to people who can't afford them from the money that we make. Or you can also give money to different organizations that you really want to support. So that's another driving force for profiting as a business. In this episode, the 70-20-10 framework that Tracy talked about really got me thinking about my own business. I'll share about that in a moment. And it also got me to think about a book that I read a while ago called Profit First. The author of the book, Mike Michalowicz, was on the BizChicks podcast. Yes, I am a big fan of that podcast, and I will link to that one as well. It's episode 241, and it'll be in our show notes on theconnectedyogateacher.com. Here was my biggest takeaway from that episode with Mike Michalowicz and Natalie. Mike talked about letting go of our traditional equation of sales minus expenses equals profit. Now, this was a bit of a mind bender for me. He talked about how when we let our profit come last in the equation, it actually will come last in our real life. So instead, Mike talks about switching it around to look at the equation like this: sales minus profit equals expenses. It seemed backwards to me at first, but as many of us know, when we need to be innovative and frugal we can be. When we have a bigger budget to use, we generally do. So if this feels like a lot to you, or if you're really curious about it, I would suggest listening to that episode on the Biz Chicks podcast and possibly also getting the book. There's also an audio version of the book. Okay, so I'm getting a little off track, but I just wanted to share that since we're chatting about money and money mindset and business. I get really excited about this part because often this is what I end up chatting with yoga teachers about in the consultation calls that I do. If you're looking at this money mindset and feeling like you're a little bit stuck, I'm excited to share something else with you. Rosalind Kemmer, who we heard from in a previous episode talking about how to share online yoga classes, is offering a money mindset workshop. It's an online training for yoga teachers, and it's on the connectedyogateacher.com underneath courses. I'm excited to take this myself. Here's a little bit about the course. Rosalind says, everyone has hang-ups around money. Whether you love it or hate it, there are judgments, expectations, and associations we all have that can cause us suffering in many different ways. Money is a form of energy. The word currency literally implies a flow. Money is connected to our sacral chakra energy center, and when healthy and in balance, moves in and out freely. But so often it plays an over or underactive role in our lives. This in-depth online money mindset workshop will be a journey into our deepest and most ingrained patterns, fears, and assumptions about money. We will learn how to heal our relationship with finances from the inside out. To find out more about this course, go to theconnectedyogateacher.com, click on courses, and you'll see Money Mindset Workshop with Rosalind Kemmer. Okay, so what would be your one takeaway from today's episode? Something that you would really like to implement in your yoga business. Personally, I really like how Tracy led us through setting our prices, and what really caught my attention was when she shared the importance of a retirement fund for self-employed yoga teachers. I have a savings account, but in my mind, it isn't really a retirement fund. So for the next quarter, I'm setting this goal to start to look at my money a little bit more and start to look at what really is my quote-unquote retirement fund and my retirement plan. I would love to hear in our Connected Yoga Teacher private Facebook group what your plan is. You can share in there. If you're looking for that group, just go to theconnectedyogateacher.com and you'll see our button there to join our yoga teacher community. Also, feel free to email me with any questions or ideas that were sparked from this podcast. I would love to hear more. Okay, Connected Yoga Teachers, that's the end of our episode. I hope that it helps you to stay connected so that you can continue to share the yoga that lights you up. Have a wonderful week.